a distant courtroom never could. This is justice that meets people where they are. The future of justice in Africa must be people rather than process-centered. Citizens do not measure justice by the complexity of processes or jargons, including res judicata. I hear something. I don't know what that means. They measure it by three simple questions. Were they heard? Was the matter resolved fairly? And did the outcome restore their dignity in time? Our institution must answer these three questions in the affirmative. Ladies and gentlemen, let me turn to another truth that is too often missed. Effective dispute resolution is not only a social good, but also an economic engine. And the Chief Justice from Zambia, who has two Kenyan names, Mumba and Malila, both are Kenyan names, just for your information, has said it ably. He has spoken about our commerce in this continent and how dispute resolution and systems that ensure that contracts are enforced in a timely manner could contribute significantly to progress and prosperity in our continent. Africa has entered the era of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, the largest free trade area in the world. The World Bank estimates it will lift our exports by US dollars 560 billion by 2035. But more trade opens the doors for more commercial disputes. And here we face an uncomfortable question. Where will those disputes be resolved? Today, many African commercial disputes are settled in London, Paris, and Geneva, far from the continent where the investment is. African arbitrators make up fewer than 8% of appointments in the world's leading arbitral institutions. And none of the world's 5 most preferred arbitration seats is in Africa. We are learning very painfully not to ship our tea or coffee or minerals abroad in raw form for others to add value and keep the reward of that value. And so I ask this gathering a direct question. Why do we still ship out our disputes? Why does African justice, like African produce, so often earn its premium somewhere else? Singapore, a single city, made itself one of the world's foremost seats of arbitration by deliberate design. Africa, a continent of 1.5 billion people, can do the same. Let us resolve African disputes on African soil by African jurists under African institutions. And by the way, that is not protectionism, that is sovereignty. Last month, here in Nairobi, we had the Africa Forward Summit. And as African leaders, we had a very candid conversation amongst ourselves and with our partners. And we came to the conclusion that we need a paradigm shift in our relationships and engagements with our partners. Relationships that are not built on dependency. Relationships that are built on sovereign equality. Relationships not built on aid, assistance, or charity, but partnerships that are mutually beneficial, fair, and balanced. We made a concrete decision that being a continent of enormous natural resources, we are going to reject relationships that extract our minerals, our goods, shipped to add value somewhere else, and that we are going to insist on investments that create value in our continent, create jobs in our continent that are fair, that are balanced, that benefits everybody equally in a win-win framework, benefiting the investors as much as the owners. That is the new relationship we want to build. And it is the conversation I had 2 days ago at the G7 forum, because that is what it is going forward. And I want to ask of this great gathering. I will ask you a few things in my concluding remarks, because I have the privilege to address many Chief Justices from our continent. It doesn't always happen. Yet we must never reduce justice to commerce. Consider this. The World Justice Project estimates that 5.1 billion people worldwide have unmet justice needs, and most of them will never set foot in a courtroom. That single fact is the case for this meeting. If courts alone could deliver justice, the gap would not stand at 5 billion people as it is today. Alternative dispute resolution is not a convenience for the powerful. It is the only scalable road to justice for citizens, the trader, the farmer, the widow, the neighbor. A justice the ordinary can only wait for, and only the wealthy can afford, is not justice. It is inequity. The changes before, or the challenges before our judiciaries are shared. So then must be our solutions. This summit is Pan-African judicial diplomacy in action, building common standards, advancing constitutionalism, and proving that the future of justice in Africa cannot be shaped in isolation. It must be shared. When courts function, citizens trust institutions. When rights are protected, societies are stable. When disputes are resolved in peace, investment and prosperity follow. Judicial leadership, therefore, is not merely a legal duty. It is a developmental responsibility. But leadership cannot deliver on conviction alone. Across our continent, judiciaries confront rising caseloads, rising expectations, and rapid technological change, but too often within shrinking budgets. If we ask our courts to be engines of peace, investment, and cohesion, we must equip them for the task. Funding our judiciaries is not an act of generosity. It is a strategic investment in stability and growth in our infrastructure, our technology, judicial training, in alternative dispute resolution programs, and alternative justice systems. I therefore make this undertaking before you, that I will rally my fellow African heads of state and government to recognize strong, independent judiciaries as a continental priority deserving adequate, predictable funding and firm policy support. And when I say so, I know Madam Chief Justice here will be my witness. We have worked together with the Kenyan judiciary. I did make commitments to work with an independent judiciary. My first act as president was to appoint and swear in judges that had not been sworn in for some time. I also undertook that I was going to the extent possible with competing interests, support the judiciary with budget. I know I haven't measured up to their full expectation, but we have kept pace. In fact, in the last 3 years, the judiciary has hired, and I have appointed 92 judges, the highest in Kenya's history by one president. And we have done so because we believe that it is the right thing to do. And as a result, we are beginning to see results. As I just said, for the first time, the judiciary reduced their caseload by almost a third, and have actually resolved more cases than were filed. So I think we are making progress. And I say this, and I can vouch to any leader in our continent that there is value in investing in our judicial system. There is value in having an independent, professional judiciary that can adjudicate matters in a manner that benefits the country. I have undertaken some of the most difficult policy positions in Kenya. If I did not have an independent, professional judiciary, I would not succeed. Yes. I will give you two examples. As a country, we have been struggling with housing and citizens living in squalor. Just for numbers, we have in Kenya 114 informal settlements. 1,114 informal settlements. We have 7 million people living in slums. It is not something that I should say, but that's what it is. And therefore, it was absolutely necessary for us, and we have been trying to settle this housing question for close to 30 years. But this time round, I said I would. And we went to Parliament, we changed the law, we brought into the equation a housing fund, a housing levy, and a whole infrastructure to deliver on it. And the results are very clear to the people of Kenya. Today, we have close to 300,000 houses being built in Kenya. We've hired 640,000 professionals, architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, electricians, masons, carpenters, name them. And the skyline of Kenya today, if you go to any city in the Republic of Kenya, we have 200 active sites in different parts of Kenya. The skyline is changing. But even with that, there are people in court who want to stop it. If we didn't have a professional judiciary, we wouldn't have moved an inch. And the question you ask them is, our constitution is explicit, as the lawyers would say. Section 43 of our constitution mandates government to house every Kenyan in a dignified manner. But there are still people who go to court. So what am I saying? I'm trying to say, just imagine if we didn't have a professional judiciary. There would be people who would want to stop us from carrying out our constitutional duty. I would say the same. Even up to now, 3 years down the road, with the houses contracted to 20th floor, 15th floor, there are still people in court struggling to stop. So I can tell any leader anywhere that a functioning judiciary is a resource, is a national resource for development, not just a dispute resolution mechanism. Last week, just to give you what we are also trying to do, that is not necessarily in legal language or in legal framework. With the Chief Justice and other leaders last week, we received regulations and a framework for us to compensate some of the people who were harmed when they were participating in protests and petitions. We decided that, you know, we are a society that must live with itself. And there are things we can do to create a much more harmonious society. And that process will be undertaken. We all agreed as different arms of government, the legislature, the executive, the judiciary, that this is the way to go. Our judiciary actually provided the framework and advised us that this is how you can go about this exercise. And